Good morning for Telesur. I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Thanks for joining us and waking up with us on From the South. Today's top story takes us here to Venezuela and to Colombia. Both governments have recalled their ambassadors for consultations amid the border crisis. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos already met with his ambassador to Venezuela, but no details were revealed about their meeting. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Delcy Rodriguez says she regrets that the progress achieved during her meeting with her counterpart, Maria Angela Holguin, has now been hampered. Both foreign ministers had agreed on jointly fighting crime at the border. Now Santos spoke of human rights concerns against Colombians, and President Nicolás Maduro responded.
President Santos, I respect you, but you are deceived, President Santos. But I think that the worst thing is that at this level, that they deceive you, President Santos. Yesterday, you went to Cucuta and they deceived you, cruelly deceived you. Everything they said, one by one the things are false, President Santos. I have videos, I have proof, I have witnesses, and I can show you that they deceived you and that you lied publicly, President Santos.
And we continue with our Latin American news coverage now. We go to Mexico. That's where officials from 121 countries have been meeting in the Mexican resort of Cancun to agree on details of how the arms trade treaty will oversee the multi-billion-dollar industry. Sources said little to no progress had been made, but they have agreed that future decisions regarding the treaty will be made by majority vote. They said this would avoid the risk of veto. They have also picked Geneva as the seat of the body to police the accord. The arms treaty has been ratified by 71 of 130 countries so far.
What we're doing here is to translate the words into action, into actually creating the regime that will make possible the implementation of the treaty. So this is what the conference is for. And so in Cancun, we're giving birth to the regime for many years to come.
South now to Guatemala, where the Congress there has launched an investigative committee. Now the five-member panel is to decide whether to strip President Otto Pérez Molina of his immunity to face impeachment. Now the president has been left increasingly isolated since investigators from the United Nations accused him of running a massive fraud scheme. Various of his officials and ministers have resigned. Most of them asked him to do the same, but he has publicly so far refused. Presidential elections will be held September 6th, and Pérez Molina's term ends in January.
We demand that this Tuesday a session be called exclusively to present the investigative committee's report. We can't wait any longer. The governability of the country is at risk.
And now to Peru with our correspondent Raul Mora. He explains how the U.S. coordinated drug war in Peru has failed, but in spite of its downsides, the government continues with the same policies.
The Center for Legal and Social Studies has released a report on the state of human rights in Latin America in relation with drug eradication policies in the region. A contribution by the Center for Research on Drugs and Human Rights focuses on the situation in Peru under a policy coordinated with the United States that has been implemented for over 20 years.
An environment of authoritarianism and arbitrariness is reproduced with lack of transparency, accountability, and ultimately a severe situation of violation of fundamental rights of the farmers that are suspected of being members of Shining Path, of being drug traffickers. This situation is maintained year after year under the pretext of fear, and it does not allow to resolve the problems of poverty.
Shining Path was an armed political group that murdered tens of thousands of civilians during the 80s and 90s. Remnants of the group have become cocaine traffickers in a remote area of the Peruvian Amazon known as Brain. Civilians in the area are caught in the confrontations between the government's eradication activities and the drug traffickers. Luis Trinidad is an activist with an organization in the area who is trying to raise awareness about human rights violations there.
When the military engages in confrontations with the remnants of Shining Path, the Quispe Palomino, and others, those who were affected by murders, bullet wounds, burning of houses, are the farmers of Union Mantaro, for example, and the same happens in Azángaro, as well as in other towns of Braén.
The drug eradication plan currently continued by President Ollanta in the area includes limiting freedom of movement, arrests without warrants, large policing operations sweeping through towns, and frequent bombings destroying civilian structures. Such plan has little effect in eliminating cocaine production, with Peru maintaining a top position in the production of the drug. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
We now take a look around the world with our World News Roundup.
Austrian authorities have risen to 71 the number of bodies found in the truck abandoned off a highway in Austria. Police had originally said 50 bodies had been found. They say 59 are male, 8 are women, and 4 are children. Only a few hours ago, they say 3 arrests had been made in the connection with the abandoned truck. Investigators have now confirmed that the cause of death of the migrants was by suffocation. Many refugees lost their lives as they fled the violence, as they died because of human smugglers. As the flow of migrants fleeing inhuman conditions at home rises, so does the number of tragedies. 2 more boats packed with migrants have sunk off the Libyan coast. According to preliminary reports, about 200 have been rescued alive, but the death perhaps of 200 or more is feared. The migrants rescued are alive were taken to a facility for undocumented migrants in Sabratha, west of the Libyan capital of Tripoli. So far this year, over 2,500 migrants have died at sea, while over 300,000 have arrived safely in Europe. We have been forced into this route. It's called the route of death. It's now called the grave of the Mediterranean Sea. Climate change is causing a dramatic rise in sea levels, NASA has warned. Experts from NASA said that on average, sea levels worldwide have risen 3 inches since 1992. They say by the year of 2100, the seas will have risen by about 6 feet. This, they said, will be devastating. NASA scientist Josh Willis said that while some of the effects of human-induced climate change are irreversible, there is still time to manage the impact it will cause.
Well, we've seen sea level rise by about 7 centimeters in the last 23 years. And we're looking at levels of rise that are much more quick in the coming decades. Most scientists believe that about 3 feet by 2100 is probably the most likely amount of sea level rise we'll have.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called this week's accord between the rival Koreas a landmark occasion, paving the way for diffuse military tension and improved ties. Both Koreas agreed to end a military standoff that sparked exchange of artillery fire, causing tensions between both countries to peak. The North Korean leader said that the agreement was reached only because of the strength of its armed forces. Southern North Korea also agreed to open a new channel of dialogue aimed at improving ties.
We end on a lighter note today, this morning, and we go to Ecuador. That's where Renata Flores became an overnight sensation on YouTube. That's because she sang Michael Jackson's hit song, The Way You Make Me Feel, in Quechua. Now, this is the native language of many Ecuadorian indigenous peoples. After her major success, Renata now wants to use her music to revalue the Inca, the language there. Now, she is 14 years old and she is still in junior high school. Millions of people still speak Quechua there, but it is slowly fading away, which is exactly what Renata wants to avoid.
This project came about because we realized that our children were no longer speaking our language. Us older people, we speak nicely. We tell each other jokes that sound better in Quechua than in Spanish. And our children weren't enjoying it as much. So speaking with kids of our association, we said this was a necessity.
Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Friday. We'll see you back here in just a few hours.